it was written that way with like single lines on each in the script of like match, fire, flame, crack. Like it was written that way in a very sparse, deep poetry manner. And growing up in South Dakota, where there's just a lot of mysticism because that's just the way the landscape just engenders it. And you can't help but be influenced by kind of the Lakota tradition of the way they view death. I think that grief just becomes metaphorical by proxy. So I can't help but look at it that way.
Mm.
And I think if people try to define grief too literally, it becomes less universal. So my goal with this film was to make it metaphorical in order for it to become more accessible for people. And the purpose of the film is for every viewer to see it and to project their own experience of grief onto it.
Good day, filmmaker Andrew Kightlinger of the amazing, gorgeous, astonishing film Okay, among others. Andrew, how are you today?
I am fantastic. Thank you for those wonderful compliments.
Earned. And I think you are of one. The first line, your IMDb, an East Indian American filmmaker born and raised in Madagascar, later transplanted to South Dakota. I assume you've never met anybody who's, oh, really? You've done that as well? Like,
Yeah, the Madagascar thing is generally pretty unique, and then usually South Dakota is unique to most people as well.
right?
But then the combo of both people is like, wait, what? How do those things happen? Yeah,
I'm so thrilled to find out how that happened. Okay premieres at Slamdance later on this month. And you also were a judge at Slamdance. So let me ask you there, like, if somebody is not familiar with Slamdance or they have thought, I've heard some feedback. People say sometimes it leans too far to be too indie. As a judge of Slamdance and also a person premiering a film there, a gorgeous film, what would you say to somebody who may not know Slamdance or may think, "Oh, this is maybe trying to be the anti-Sundance," that kind of thing?
I think that sentiment's ridiculous because Slam Dance is both hip, but also some of the greatest filmmakers working today premiered there. They were
Yeah.
discovered there. Christopher Nolan, Steven Soderbergh, the Russo brothers, Ryan Johnson. But you could just stop at Christopher Nolan, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So if anybody's thinking, ugh, that's too hoity-toity or that's not good enough or whatever, just stop and just submit the movie because they're having being on the jury, which I can't talk too much about yet because
Of
the
course.
festival hasn't happened. The movies are very varied. It's a very eclectic selection of films, and the tastes are all over the place, and that's what's really fun about the festival. It's a cornucopia of stuff, and everybody should submit.
I completely agree with you, and I can almost go down the list and look at the directors, watch a film, and I'm already, like, emailing, like, "Can you be on the podcast?" Like, it's such a varied different types of film. Like, I don't feel like there's one type where you're like, "Okay, it's trying to do that." It's just like the variety that has been selected is just incredible. And for somebody who does an indie film podcast, I think I could talk with every single director that because they all have different stories and all that. So I completely agree with you, and I'm so excited that this edition is happening. So that history, Madagascar, South Dakota, now having a film at Slamdance, how did you know that you were gonna go into filmmaking?
What a vast question, but I do have an answer
Right.
for you. I
Alright,
do have an
good.
answer for you. Yeah, so I guess I should start at the beginning. So I was born and raised in Madagascar. I was born in a village on the southern tip of the island, and my mother literally I was in a bush hospital, and I grew up my parents were microbiologists, so they went into the rainforest, and they taught people that lived in the rainforest about vaccines and sanitation and all that stuff. And I was just a kid, right? That was my life. And I went to Malagasy schools with Malagasy children. The French was my first language. And I think that movies, I didn't wasn't really exposed to media until I was around 5 years old, which was saw when we first got a TV and when I first saw a movie. And there was this Foot Locker that we called the Red Island Video Club. And it had that moniker because Madagascar is famous for its iron-rich earth. So when astronauts are in the space station looking down, Madagascar always appears red because
Really?
of
Wow.
the iron
I
in
didn't know that.
the earth. Yeah. So we called it so it's known as the Red Island. So we called it the Red Island Video Club because this footlocker would travel around from missionary family to missionary family and stay with the family for like months on end. Because getting around the island, especially in the 80s when I was born, but even through the 90s and even today to some extent, infrastructurally, the island is always 20 years behind the rest of the world. So
Right.
it sometimes will take 7 days to drive even 200 miles. So that footlocker would stay with the family for months. And in that footlocker was a trove of VHS tapes that
Oh
we
my
would just
god.
watch. So it was your own like blockbuster. And it was usually movies that were taped off the TV in America and then brought over. And so it was like there'd have be like 5 films, right, that could fit on it, and it'd be Gremlins, The Goonies, usually an R-rated movie I probably shouldn't have been watching, like Jagged Edge with Glenn Close and Jeff Bridges
Yeah.
and Rocky or something. So that was my film education, and the first movie that I saw that I remember seeing in my memory bank here was E.T.
Right.
Very classic, but there's a reason that movie is always seminal for a lot of I'm in my late 30s, seminal for people my age because there's something about Spielberg's magic that just sparked for us. And so that was the movie that kinda lit my fuse, and I said, "Whatever the feeling is that I get from those kids riding on those bikes, I wanna be a part of whatever that is." Not knowing how that's conjured there.
How that works, yeah.
Yeah, and I became obsessed with that magic, and my parents both again, my dad is a PhD in parasitology, and my mother's a
Oh my
microbiologist. They were just like and I'm an only child, like, "Why is this kid obsessed with movies? Like, why we want a scientist? He could be Einstein or Miss Marie Curie, but instead he's in his bedroom running around pretending to be Batman. We don't know what we've done. Where did we go wrong?" And so the years went by. Jim Carrey became a thing in the 90s. I was obsessed with him. I wanted to be an actor for a long time. So high school, college, I'm giving you the quick elevator version of this.
Oh, yeah.
I did improv comedy in college. I did theater. I did all that stuff. And then in college, I realized I wanted to be in control of everything and not just be on stage, even though I loved being an actor and I loved being very big in performance and also like musical
Right.
theater. I loved also helping actors get to that place, and I loved also being the storyteller. And so I was like, "Oh, directing is the way to do that." And so I pivoted, and I love to write too. So
Right.
I was like, I can be in control of all those elements, and so that's how I pivoted into that. But in the classic stuff in high school, I had a camcorder. I made movies with my friends, and then I went to film school after college. I studied politics in college.
Okay.
Because I had that thing in college where my parents, being practical-minded scientists, kind of,
Right.
you know you wanna be Spielberg,
But do
but
something practical.
do
Yeah.
something practical. And even I was a kid who grew up in South Dakota too. I moved there when I was 12, so I did high school and college there. So, like, how does a kid in rural South Dakota become a filmmaker? Like, how do you
Connect the
even do that?
2, right.
Yeah, so it was just a dream, this thing, right? So I studied politics instead because I grew up overseas and I just had this inherent interest in it. And being a politician's another thing I could have done and almost did. Thank God I didn't because look at the times we live in. But there's something just ate at me. I had to do it. And so then I ended up going to film school at Boston University. And that's where I got the tools and realized, oh, yeah, this is something I'm good at, or at least somewhat good at, and can continue to become better at. And learned that I could write, that I was a good writer, and that sort of snowballed into the career that I'm slowly carving at.
That's such a crazy story. In Madagascar, do you think that a lot of places like that are shaped by, like, those blockbusters like that? I think back so I was in the army, was in Afghanistan for a little bit,
Mhm.
and we saw, like,
Crazy.
people with selling, like, pirated DVDs, and it was the same wasn't VHS, but it was the same sort of thing, right? It was, like, things that maybe were shown in a theater somewhere in America, but, like, they had a camera or whatever it was, and that's people's relationship with film. It's not like an independent film, it's like a blockbuster. So do you feel like in places like Madagascar, Afghanistan, other places where you may not have the ability to interact with independent films. Like, you have to think about it the lens of those filmmakers are coming from blockbusters and not just an NYU education where you're watching, like, Truffaut or something like that.
Absolutely. I got a great short story where when Titanic came out, we were living in Madagascar still, and the only way we could get news from America was through the Voice of America on
Right.
NPR. And my dad had this little shortwave radio, and then we would, in order to get Voice of America, he had to extend the antenna and then use tinfoil and wrap it around the tip of the antenna and then snake the tinfoil out the window and up onto the roof of our house in order to get the
Oh my
signal.
god.
And then we'd set it by the window, and then we sit there every morning. And then on Monday morning, we would get the Voice of America kinda scratchy, right? We had to choo choo, you gotta turn the knob, and we would get the box office receipts. And I remember when Titanic came out, and I was obsessed. I'm still obsessed with box office returns. Like, every Friday morning, I'm like, "Oh, or Saturday morning, okay, what's number 1 at the box office?" And, I cared maybe too much. And my first, like, big movie comes out, I'm gonna be, like, devastated when it opens at, like, number 7. Anyway, so I would when Titanic came out, I was obsessed with this movie that was taking America by storm and was number 1 for 7, 12 weeks, whatever. And when it finally came to Madagascar, it was at one of those video rental stores where every single movie was pirated. Every single VHS box was photocopied, so it was all just black and white photos
Right.
of the poster. And we had and it was owned by, like, a Persian couple, like, they were Muslim, and they knew me
Absolutely.
very well because I went every single day, and I was renting movies, and we told them, "When Titanic comes, we're the first to know, and you call us, and we're gonna come and get it." And so when it finally came, we were so excited, and we made a big family movie night. My mom even got popcorn, which was not easy to come by,
Oh, that's so cool.
and we popped it in. But what they didn't know is the person that pirated the movie didn't know that it was 3 hours and 15 minutes long.
So they didn't have the
Yeah, so when the ship breaks in half, the tape just ends. So we didn't see the last hour of Titanic until a year later when we went to Minnesota, went to the US for the summer, and it was still playing in theaters at a cheap seats, and then we finally saw the movie in the theaters. Yeah,
Oh, that's so incredible, and it just shows your love of film and filmmaking, and I think that really shines through on your film. So, from 2009 onward, you've made several shorts, several features. Certainly, you've heard the wisdom, make low budget features no matter what. You don't need to make shorts because you can monetize a low budget feature. So, what has been your relationship with shorts and features and, like, deciding how to continue pushing that rock up the mountain?
there was so right after film school, I came out to LA for a year, and I did the classic, like, internship thing,
Okay.
and I was always a weird one in film school because I came from South Dakota. Always a big fish in a little pond. There's not many people in South Dakota wanting to make movies. And I'm a very entrepreneurial type, so I know a lot of people and I'm good at raising money, which they don't teach in film school. They don't teach you how to produce in film school. They don't teach you how to fundraise, which is why I could have been a politician. And who knows, still might if I flame out of this
Still
career.
right.
There's always you could always pivot, right? Spencer Pratt can do it. I could do it. I should
Exactly.
drag him. But anyway, a train of thought back onto this. But I was in film school, I was like the one who made a thesis film, and a thesis film should cost like 5 grand, but mine cost $80,000. Okay,
What?
because I went out to
And raise money for it?
yeah, because I went out to my dentist and said, "Hey, can I get 10 grand?" He's, "Sure." And he just from my hometown, hometown kid made good. And so I went to LA, and
Crazy.
that thesis film was not very good, unfortunately, but people believed in me, God bless them. So I came out to LA and I worked for the Kennedy Marshall Company. So I worked for Frank Marshall and Kathleen Kennedy's. It was really cool to work for your heroes.
Right.
Um,
Oh, wow.
and to go every day to work and the yeah, the mine cart from Temple of Doom is in the office, and that's cool. But I was really obsessed with the diamond ray gun from Congo was there.
Yeah.
Frank directed it. That was like I geeked out on that. And I did script coverage there. And after a year working there, they offered me a job, which is really cool. But I was at a crossroads, and the crossroads was to stay in LA and work within the system, right? And just do like office job stuff.
Right.
Or I had the opportunity to go back to South Dakota and direct a low budget feature for around 180 grand. And I had a chance to ask Frank Marshall for advice. Now he does not remember this, I guarantee it. because it's a lot of people in his life. But it was for me, this is like seminal advice that changed the course of my life. And I gave him those 2 routes, and he said, "What do you wanna be in this industry?" I said, "I wanna be a director." He said, "Then you have to go make the movie,"
Yeah.
which is what they always say. It's what James Cameron always says, "Go make a movie if you wanna direct." And it's so true, so I did. I did the thing honestly, if anybody else had given me that advice, if I hadn't been the director of Congo and the producer of all the Spielberg movies, I probably wouldn't have listened. Seriously. Like, if it had
Wow.
been you, I probably wouldn't have listened to it, but it was Frank Marshall said, "Okay, fine, I'm gonna do it." That's how much influence he had, and I did it, and I went and made this $180,000 feature called Dust of War when I was, like, 23 years old. Probably had no business making a movie, and it was like a Mad Max meets Star Wars, like, ripoff that was super fun. I wouldn't call it a great film, but I'm really proud of it, and I learned a lot. I learned the biggest lesson I learned was who not to work with. You know, the
Interesting.
biggest a valuable lesson to learn as a filmmaker, choose your collaborators wisely, but it's still a movie I'm very proud of. It's streaming, people should go see it. Go watch it, and, it's got Tony Todd and Doug Jones in it. It's Not the Love,
Ooh, that's
and
all.
yeah, the late great Tony Todd, and that film coming off that movie, I got a few offers to direct to DVD Dolph Lundgren and Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, and I knew I was smart enough, thank God, to know that if I went down that road, I'd get pigeonholed to directing DTV films,
Yeah.
and I didn't want that for my career. So I said no to those jobs and turned down money and went and just raised more money on my own. Again, dentists, doctors in my hometown, and raised another 140 grand and made an indie feature that I just wrote on my
How
own.
many dentists do you know, Andrew? That's impressive.
Just you gotta be crafty. It's all about I always kids now, because 'cause I'm old enough now that there's, like, young film students asking me for advice. They're like, "How do I
Right.
raise money for a movie?" And I say, "Promise them nothing.
Yeah.
Don't promise that they'll make their money back. In fact, you be honest to say you're gonna lose everything because film is a risk. What you're investing in is me.
Yeah.
You're investing in me. You want to produce my movie, you wanna go play golf with your buddies, and you wanna go fishing with your buddies and say, 'I produced this movie, and this kid's
Look
going
at my name
places.'
at the credits, yeah.
Look at my name in the credits, and you wanna feel good about helping, like, a young artist, and if you sell that to them, they'll invest. If you sell them numbers, they're not gonna do it, or they're just gonna
Mm,
write you off." And so that's how I was able to make that work for a long time. And so that second feature, which was Tater Tot and Patent, that's the movie that got me a manager in Los Angeles. And in between those features, after Dust of War, another lesson I learned on features is, like, what can I do better as a filmmaker?
right.
Let me go and make short and iron out those creases in the t-shirt, and let's see if we can make that look better. And I even did that on OK, on this latest one as well. And so shorts are good for doing reps in the gym in a way. And so sometimes short films are good for those things, but I don't get too obsessed with doing them because they don't beyond just being a tool to hone your craft, a short film,
Right.
I think they could be a time suck and be an oxygen. They can suck up a lot of oxygen of your time. And I think a lot of filmmakers make them and then spend like years of their life like trying to get them on
Yeah.
a festival circuit. It's just go make a feature. Just go use that time to go make a feature after you're done with it. Like I don't get
That's
too attached to my projects. I'm done and then I go. You know?
there's so much good advice in there. So, when you say make sure you work with who you're collaborating with, how do you go through that process now? Is it through just, like, having conversations like this, like, trying to discern who you might fit with in terms of personalities, talking with not formal references, but, like, people who've worked with, let's say, a cinematographer before, that kinda thing? Like, how do you suss out who you wanna work with?
Oddly enough, it is almost 80% instinct.
Yeah.
It's talking to somebody like, oh, this person seems do I instinctually feel like I could work with this person for 2 to 3 years on a project or
Right.
be on set with this person for 45 days, right? Or 3
Yeah.
months, whatever. But then it is like whispering, and now we have social media, so I can DM somebody on Instagram, "Hey, I'm thinking of hiring," etcetera. Like Oren Sofer shot this movie. Oren Sofer also happens to be my best friend here in Los Angeles. I knew that he was great beforehand, but he's actually a person who knows everybody. Like on my last feature, for example, on Lost in a Mountain in Maine, I needed to hire a cinematographer for that movie, and he was the guy I went to and said, "Hey, I'm looking for a DP. Here's a list of names I was given to by the agencies. Help me. These are the people I've ironed out the people whose work I admire. Like, what have you heard about these people?" And so that, and he helped me go through those things. And so it is that's how you have to parse those things out. And sometimes you just have to work with people too.
Yeah.
And you go through the fire with them and you find out, oh, that was a mistake. And you're never gonna avoid that. I think once you get to Paul Thomas Anderson doing one battle after another, I'm sure that he now has his team completely. Christopher Nolan, for example, the reason
Right.
he is operating on the level that he is that he has his team almost there's a reason he's obsessed with watches and, like, time. 'Cause his team is so well oiled that he expects, like, loyalty in a certain way. And he's always working with the same people for a reason, because once he finds his people, he never lets go of them. That's really smart, actually.
Yeah.
Really smart, because then you always know what you're gonna get on the next project. And it's a form of control that it's almost like using the same brushes over and over again as a painter, which is weird because they're human beings, but
Exactly.
there's something about it that's very smart in a way. But it's about finding the right collaborators, going into battle together.
I love that, Andrew. So, $80,000 thesis film, you would recommend making sure that goes to a feature? Like, people should
Yes.
not spend a ton of money on a short film. They should just make
They
sure that
should
they make
not do
that into a feature.
they should not spend $80,000 on their thesis film. That was a mistake.
Okay. But you learned from it, and it sounds like you've come up with a strategy where and we'll talk about, okay, if you make a short that has, like, a precise meaning to it, like, it's not just like you made a short and it's just send it out in the world, hope it's successful. You made it for certain reasons, and I'm excited to talk with you about that. And so my next question, you may not be able to answer this yet. You mentioned programming. So, won't talk about the films that you selected, but is there anything you can say generally about the films you found that were not selected? Was there a thread where you're like, "Man, I wish state filmmakers would not do this as part of their films," or was it just there's no way to put, like, a generalization to the films that you guys didn't end up selecting?
Oh, now I understand, 'cause you sent some questions. I was not part of the selection committee.
The jury.
Yeah, I was just
You were
part of the
part of the
jury,
jury.
so I just
Okay.
watched the movies that were already selected. So
Got it.
so
Okay.
I could tell you,
Okay.
like, the common thread between all of the movies that I watched on the featured jury, the movies in competition, I would say that 70% of them were in black and white, which is a trend right now,
Mm,
which kinda shocked me, and almost 50% of them had chapter headings throughout the film. Chapter
interesting.
1, chapter 2 with a title. But black and white is very in vogue. And maybe that's the taste of the programmers, but I do think black and white is becoming a thing again with The Lighthouse, that movie coming out, and a few other films. I think that it's a good way for independent filmmakers to make a statement cheaply and make something artsy that stands out. And some of the films I saw justified the use of black
Yeah.
and white, and some of them absolutely did not. And I think that's always the danger there, is that you're just doing it to be pretentious, but then some of them, like, absolutely black and white was the right choice.
Andrew, this is probably a really stupid question, but just roll with me on this. So, the jury in M Slamdance just saw, like, the ones that were already selected. Does the jury ever involved in the programming, or is that the programmers do their own thing and then normally just present it to a jury of a film festival to be involved in that part of it?
That's exact the programmer there's a whole host of programmers that watch all the
Right.
movies, and the jurors are completely
Never
separate.
involved? Okay.
Yeah, and in programming, it seems like an arduous process because you have to
Right.
wade through all the bad stuff,
Okay,
um,
yeah.
and then I basically got to watch 18,
The good stuff.
16 or 18. Yeah, like the cream of the crop, and I
Yeah.
didn't like all of them.
Of
Art is subjective. Just like I go to Sundance, or I try to see almost every movie that's programmed at Cannes because I've never
Me
been to
too.
Cannes, but I try to see all those movies. And there's movies that I don't like that they program.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. It's my prerogative as a juror not to like things. It's my prerogative to
Right.
love movies. Yeah.
I will take every French filmmaker I could have on the podcast. I think I have 3 or 4 episodes of French filmmakers that I just love everything about Cannes. Like, the films that they choose are usually just international in scope and just compelling stories. I think it's my favorite festival in terms of the films that are out there. Do you think your internet do you come from things from that national mindset? I'm almost answering my own question, but given your background, it seems like you're bringing that to your viewing preferences.
Yes. Yeah, yes, because as much as I grew up on blockbusters, there was because I grew up with a lot of French influence as a
Yeah.
child, I was seeing Claire Denis movies probably way too young, for example, is one of my favorite films, and so I that influence is creepy. So one of the something that I have been trying to do, and that's very present in OK, it's also present in my last feature, and this is something I'm trying to very intentionally do as a director, is to make movies that are American, because I primarily wanna make movies that are for American audiences, that deal with American themes, but have a European bent to them, because that
Mm.
is where I'm from. So how can I add European elements to those films? So when we talk about OK, for example, the editing style is very formalistic in that film. That's something that I love about Nolan's work, for example. Like Oppenheimer uses like Nicholas Roeg's editing techniques in that movie. And that's the first time I'd ever seen a blockbuster do that. I was sitting there, oh my God, like he's just breaking the form. It's been done before a million times by independent filmmakers in Europe, but he's doing it on a grand scale because he can get away with it because it's Christopher Nolan. And he's doing it. I'm like, no, thank God somebody's doing it, right? So he's bringing that form over here. So I'm trying to blend the two and Frankenstein them. Whether that's something that people respond to is to be borne out over the course of my career. So
Do you think that some of the episode and getting back to what you said about some of the films that you saw, do you think some of the title cards are moving in the direction of episodic content? That's the other thing that's maybe not shorts, maybe not features, but, like, people are making, like, series. Like, how do you see that fitting into a filmmaker's journey?
that's a great point. I didn't even think of that. That a lot of those chapter headings might be because we're consuming content in different ways now. I think for me, the use of the chapter headings in the films that I saw, and even in movies that I see in general, like in theaters, like Jordan Peele used chapter headings in Nope, for example. Sometimes it can be to cover up like structural issues. But I find that the best films use the chapter headings to still, they still adhere to a good narrative structure. And I think the ones that use them poorly are the ones that do feel episodic.
Yeah.
And so the films just do feel anthological, for lack of a better
Mm.
word. But the strongest ones, like in my jury selection process, were the ones where the chapter headings felt like it was a building story and the chapters were building on each other.
And are you bullish on episodic content? Do you think that's a place for filmmakers to pursue
Yeah,
projects?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I would love to do a limited series at some point.
That's fantastic. So that leads us to Okay, which is one of Slamdance's spotlight films. It's amazing. There's so much in here I want to talk with you about. If somebody hasn't heard about it, what are they expecting to see when they sit down and watch?
But yeah, it's a 15-minute short, and it's produced by Fujifilm on purpose. We can get into that, or why that is. And it's the first film ever shot on the GFX ETERNA 55, which is their flagship digital cinema camera to compete with ARRI and RED. And the short film is a movie about grief at its core, and it's about a woman who is grieving the death of her husband, and she's trying to find healing by searching for him in the cosmos. And that's a general idea of the film, and people just need to watch it to figure out what that means.
There's so much I love about the film, but let's start by talking about how you showed grief. So, there's also a great making of documentary on the film, which I'll link in the show notes that people should watch. Hit pause on the podcast, watch that documentary. It's just fantastic. It talks with you, talks with cinematographer, people who've worked on the film of explaining like why the film was made. But it's just so fantastic. Let me talk with you about grief. So one of the things you say in that documentary is that you see it as an engine for empathy, the film, and I love the way that you phrase that. And I feel like we don't see filmmakers take on this challenge of grief and of showing it in a way that's utilizing the visual medium. So you'll see people occasionally sit in front of a coffin and be like, "I'm so sorry." And that's telling. That's telling the viewers that someone died. Using sci-fi and other tools of the surreal to get hit on grief is showing. And so how did you come up with that concept as part of the film? And do you feel like more filmmakers should be open to showing the surreal to get into your head? Like you need to find a way to get into the viewer's head without words or like hitting them over the head.
Yeah, yes, great question, by the way. I think grief, number 1, is one of the most kind of, like, ill-defined human emotions, right? We can never talk about it, or we talk
Right.
about it too much, but still we don't understand it because everybody experiences it differently, but we all experience it because we all lose people, because we all die,
Yeah.
and I wrote this movie 15 minutes after seeing my grandmother's body for the last time. So
Mm.
it was at the she died last year. She was 96. She died very peacefully in her sleep. She lived a long, wonderful life. And she was at the funeral home. Her body was prepared. I remember seeing her body. And then 15 minutes later, we were driving back, and it was in South Dakota. And I saw we were driving back, it's just flat, open prairie. And I opened up the laptop. I was not driving. And I opened up the laptop and I just told my dad that I'm just gonna write something quick. And I had known this Fujifilm project that, like, this project was percolating in the back of my head, and I needed to have a short film idea. And I started writing, and I wrote the concept in 20 minutes. And I wrote it as like a beat poem, basically, the writing of it. So the way the film is constructed with shots of like eggs cracking and flame and lighting of matches, it was written that way with like single lines on each in the script of like match, fire, flame, crack. Like it was written that way in a very sparse, deep poetry manner. And growing up in South Dakota, where there's just a lot of mysticism because that's just the way the landscape just engenders it, and you can't help but be influenced by kind of the Lakota tradition of the way they view death. I think that grief just becomes metaphorical by proxy, so I can't help but look at it that way.
Mm.
And I think if people try to define grief too literally, it becomes less universal. So my goal with this film was to make it metaphorical in order for it to become more accessible for people. And the purpose of the film is for every viewer to see it and to project their own experience of grief onto it. So by defining grief less in the film and just showing this woman's daily routine and her desire to connect with it and grapple with it in this sort of ill-defined way, the audience can just remember their own loss of their parent or their brother or child, or even having experienced maybe their friend lost a parent, they're seeing their friend go through it. They can just project their own experience of it onto the movie. And that was my goal, is not to say something about it, but for people just to bring their own emotion to it. So the film, so that was always
Wow.
the goal of it. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That was the goal.
Wow, Andrew. And why don't it's like asking you, why aren't filmmakers more creative? But I guess that is the question. Like, why don't more people take that approach for showing emotions on screen?
This is spending too much time on Chat GPT.
Maybe.
For it. But no, no, not even laziness. I think this one, the unique one thing about this project and why I think the film turned out so well is because it did come from an honest place,
Yeah.
because my grandmother died and I made art from it. And so I think that honesty is a huge part of that. And
Yeah.
so when people are writing or when artists are creating, a lot of times, and we unfortunately in film specifically, we work in a medium where we're desperately trying to get ahead because it is also inherently very entrepreneurial. So
Right.
we're always trying to find like the equation, but a lot
Yeah.
of times that's not honest. And so then that's when we write the scene with the casket and the person saying, I miss you so much. I wish you weren't
Right.
dead," instead of actually doing the honest thing. And it took me time to learn that too, right? And Tater Tot and Patton, like my second feature, that is a movie that's also about grief. That's about the death of my mother, who I lost when I was 21. And that script came from an honest place. In
Yeah.
the moments in that movie that make me cringe, that's not a perfect film. When I go back and watch it, there are moments that make me cringe in that movie. Those moments are the moments that are honest. In Lost on a Mountain in Maine, which was a movie that I did not write, that was my first time doing something for hire. I had as a director, I had to find the honesty in that project before I could fully release myself to it. And what I found in it was the father-son relationship and how it related to my own relationship with my father. And that's where I could come at it from an honest perspective. But Okay is the most honest movie I've ever made because I
Mm.
was able to pour myself into it.
I think you've brought up another graduate level question here, Andrew. But what's the best way to offer feedback on that kind of thing? Is it to say, be more honest in your filmmaking? That seems almost too on the nose for to express to someone. But how do you give that feedback in a way that somebody will see as productive?
That's a great question. We might have to unpack that, the first part of that
Yeah,
first. I hate to say that, yes, it's on the nose, but if you look at artist therapy, which it is for the artist,
right.
right? Van Gogh cut his ear off for a reason. It is that, like, we go to therapy because we need to be more honest with ourselves, and that's how we heal. And so our
Right.
art needs to be more honest because that's the best version of that art. I think, like, I started going to therapy a few years ago, and my art became better because of it.
Mm.
So there's because I started becoming more honest with myself about a bunch of things. And so, what a hard question. Like,
I know.
how do you communicate that? A lot of it is just, like, trial and error too, like, you have to and some directors make their first feature out of the gate, like Damien Chazelle, and it's just a home
Yeah,
run.
exactly.
And they made something that's very honest and raw, and it was a movie about, like, his own, like, insecurities and his own, like, drive. I
Yeah.
didn't do that. I'm a director who's, like, slowly building his career and making mistakes along the way, and I'm maybe because I'm just good at fundraising, I can keep
Right.
failing and starting again. But so everybody's got a different path, but yeah, I don't know, I'm not sure how to communicate that with other than the way you just phrased it, which is find a
Yeah.
way to make your art honest. And unfortunately, with the onslaught of something like AI, ChatGPT, we don't want to get
Right.
too deep into that stuff, but I do see a lot of like younger filmmakers send me like their ideas or treatments, like, "Hey, could you look at this?" And I can tell that it's been written with that format.
By really?
Yeah, I can tell because they haven't done the work to even mask it. Like, you could tell they just copied it and tossed into a Word doc. It's got, like, the GPT formatting or the Gemini.
Oh god.
Like, oh god. And I'm like, "This isn't honest," right? Like, you've had something, like, regurgitate this for you. So I fear that art's just gonna become less and less honest,
Right.
which is something that we have to fight for. So I think going back to original, I think maybe it is that simple and on the nose.
Yeah.
And people need to figure out what that means for themselves.
That's a great answer to a very difficult question. So, how did the relationship with Fujifilm start? Was it you mentioned that they were on board with doing a project with you before knowing, like, the story behind Okay. So it sounds like you had formed a relationship with you, particularly the filmmaker of, "Okay, who's the best guy out there to show off our camera?" And that sort of like the genesis of the relationship?
Ish, yes. So Oren
Yeah.
Sofer, the cinematographer, he's a cinematographer influencer, if you may, because he's got a huge following on Instagram. So oftentimes camera companies will reach out to him to showcase something. Like we did that Sony project together that we shot at the Getty Museum.
Get it.
And because Oren and I are also just like really good friends and we go to movies all the time together and hang out all the time and nerd out all the time, we've been wanting to work together forever. And specifically so we can make features together as well. But we knew that we had to work together first to see if maybe we actually hate each other as collaborators. Like we only
Right.
get along as movie buddies,
Friend.
popcorn. So we did the Getty project and we knew, okay, like we obviously like click, right? It's like a hive mind. It's like that character from Total Recall. That's the thing we always use. Kawato with baby. There
Right.
comes a, that's what we always joke.
Exactly.
That's us when we're on set. But I'm the baby. So anyway, got off track there with that little thing. So anyway, so Fujifilm approached him because he also did something very innovative with the movie The Creator, shooting on the FX3 and whatnot. So they approached him about showcasing GFX Eternal 55. And he said, okay, great, but there's a director I want to work with. His name is Andrew Kightlinger. And they're like, who? and so and so he vouched for me.
That's
Uh,
so cool, Andrew.
yeah, which is very sweet of him. He vouched for me, and of course, I had to meet them and interview them, and I did put on my best salesman face, just like I did with my dentist, and they bought it hook, line, and sinker. But I also put together a pitch deck. I came up with a slew of concepts, okay, of which wasn't on there yet. Had it wasn't on there yet, but it came soon after. But everything was sort of sci-fi leaning, obviously, and then because Oren and I wanted to showcase the
The
camera in all its
camera,
glory,
right?
and that was the mandate, was to come up with concepts that showcase the camera's capabilities. But at the same time, they also didn't want to restrict us. This wasn't a typical thing where a camera company just wanted pretty images.
Right.
Fujifilm, the blessing of working with them and what was magical about them as a brand was that they wanted to embolden us as artists to make the project that we wanted to make, which is
That's
really
incredible.
rare. It's really, and they gave us maybe too long of a leash to go and just go make something. And honestly, it was a gift. And okay was probably the most esoteric, weirdest concept we pitched. Like an old woman grieving in a house by herself, and her husband returns as an alien. It was the weirdest concept by far. But they said, "Oh, that's our favorite one. Let's do that one." And we just ran with it.
Oh, it's an incredible gift that they gave you to be that open because, like you mentioned, I feel like that doesn't happen very often at all.
No, usually there'd be these huge parameters, but there really wasn't. And we were smart enough not to like pitch nudity and like violence. They
Right.
knew, let's do Eyes Wide Shut. Like we knew not to pitch that. So and he and I knew we wanted to do something like
Yeah.
Spielbergian, but also Bergmanian. So we wanted to do an Ingmar
Mm.
Bergman Spielberg pastiche. And but again, to their credit, they also let me shoot something that was like I mentioned Nicholas Roeg. Walkabout is one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time. I wanted to make a movie that had very formalistic editing and very dirty 70s style camera work as well. And they didn't shy away from that. Great. Go and move our camera around and have jarring editing and do all this crazy stuff with it. And they were totally fine with it. Maybe they were screaming inside, but they
But I think it promotes the camera so much better that the film is also great than it's here we just shot this film and it's actually a terrible film, but the pictures look great and you can't sell that you can't promote that. That's not gonna be seen, whereas I think people are gonna walk out of the theater in okay and just be like, "Wow." It connects the camera with something beautiful rather than something that is just meh. And I feel like with technology, and I'm interested in getting your thoughts on this, for a while, and maybe we phased out of that, technology was like the leading front of films, is that you could get your independent film to look like a studio film because of technology. And you'd have films that just had wooden characters, wooden stories, but wow, it looks like a studio shot it. Do you feel like now that there's been a leveling off of like cameras and you can still get that cinema feeling from just accessible cameras now that we're moving into this area where we're combining something like this camera that you shot with an okay with a great story and that's going to become more commonplace as we go on.
I really hope so. I don't think anybody has any excuse anymore
Yeah.
not to A, have a great script, and then B, shoot it on something nice. Fujifilm has specifically designed this camera to make it a more accessible, affordable piece of machinery for not machinery, tool for filmmakers to use. And yeah, they can go and use an iPhone if they want and do the Sean Baker thing. But in my
Right.
opinion, the Sean Bakers of today, the new Sean Bakers, can use GFX Eterna 55 to go and film their little indie movie on the streets of Las Vegas very easy if they want to. And they can go shoot a movie in the Midwest if they want to on the Great Plains. They can do all kinds of things. It's a very nimble camera. It was very easy to use. And we shot on a prototype. that was only like 30% ready. All it could do was you
Wow.
could just press record. That's literally all you could do on it at the time. Like, we were like, "I hope this works." We were an early version
Wow.
of it. And it was the first time I ever made a movie where we had to, like, push the schedule because the firmware wasn't ready. It's like the camera was being a diva. No, it was worth the wait. So it was I hope I was allowed to talk about that. Sorry, Fujifilm. I said in the email, "Stop." But I'm just they love me. They hate me now. Anyway, I'm getting off track. But no, like, I see movies in theaters now
Yeah,
where I'm perplexed, the big studio movies where they look like crap, and I'm
yeah,
perplexed as to why they do. And Oren and I always talk about this, and we think it's just taste. It all comes down to taste in the end.
right.
Is it budget? It no, it's not budget because I made Lost in a Mountain of Maine was a $7 million feature, and we could have shot on any camera. You can shot on an Arri Alexa. We shot on the Arri Alexa for that one, and it could have looked like crap. But the DP on that movie, Don Menon, we intentionally wanted to make it look like a motion picture.
Yeah,
That was shot in the early '80s. We wanted it to look magical, and you have to just be intentional about those things. And the same thing with OK. Orrin and I wanted it to feel tangible. We wanted it to have a grain. We wanted it to feel like something. And so I think this camera, like any other tool, is just about the filmmaker's intention. And if you don't really care about that, it can look like shit if you want it to. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
you are. Yeah,
Yeah, you like your script. If your script's bad, it doesn't matter how good it looks. Like we've seen all
yeah,
those movies, right? And if your script is incredible, and your movie looks like crap, so I just sit there wondering like, why didn't you try harder for the look?
yeah,
Because I don't think even if your movie's 1 million, that shouldn't matter. Because I just juried a bunch of Slamdance movies, many of which the budgets were probably 500,000 or less, and some of them look like $10 million movies.
yeah.
So there is no excuse.
Okay is screening at DGA. How do you feel about how independent films are screened? So this is obviously screening at a theater, but most of the films are watched on laptops or if you're lucky, a TV screen. Did you guys have discussion, you and or Fujifilm? How does this film gonna look on a laptop or a computer screen? And generally, like, how should filmmakers approach that knowing that their films, you'd love them to have a huge theatrical run, but most of the time they're gonna be, like, maybe limited by the ability of wherever they're watching it, which could be their phone for gosh sakes.
That's the existential crisis of our time in
Yeah,
cinema, I think, right now. My Orrin and I lament about it every day. All my friends and I lament about it every day. When I went to film school, which is in 2009 to 2011, that was at the fulcrum point of Netflix going from DVDs and pouches to streaming. I remember House of Cards debuting, and I didn't realize at the time that I went to film school thinking my movies are gonna be in movie theaters.
right.
And now I have this existential crisis of I have to fight to make movies that will be in movie theaters, and I need to be intentional about that. And I love seeing people like Zach Kreger saying, "No, Weapons is gonna be a movie theater movie, and I'm not gonna do." I think he was gonna do a movie for Netflix, but said, "If it's not gonna be theatrical, I'm not doing it." Like,
That's awesome.
filmmakers have to do that. And am I gonna say no to something?
Right.
Who knows, right? I'm still a struggling artist, right? I'm not, but that said, I think, like, on this project on OK, we obviously knew that this was gonna be a social media driven thing. This was to promote a camera first and foremost, so most people are gonna be watching this on laptops and on phone screens, and every so often at a trade show. And one of the big discussions, probably the biggest point of not contention, it's the wrong word, the biggest point of discussion between us, the creatives, Oren and I, and then, the brand department was using grain, right? Because
Mhm.
they want to show the image of the camera, but then Oren and
Right.
I want to create a film because we colored the movie at Photochem with a brilliant colorist named Claire Iannelli, who worked on Sinners and Project Hail Mary. And
It's gorgeous.
she did an incredible job. And we wanted to make a movie. We wanted to showcase the camera to filmmakers so that directors will go, And cinematographers go, "Oh, we wanna use that camera on our
I
movie."
want that. Yeah.
But Fujifilm has a different mandate too, that they want brands to go, "Oh, we wanna use this for a commercial," and things like that. So, we had to
Interesting.
compromise and have a compromise and have the web version be the trade show web version has no grain, and then the Vimeo version and the one you'll see at the DGA, that'll have grain on it, which was these
Huh.
little compromises you had to make. So, those are things you have to think about, and then from on a macro level, for my features, even though, like, on Lost in a Mountain in Maine, for example, every movie that I shoot from the moment I write it and then when I'm prepping it to be shown at every movie theater possible. It is always visually for the big screen for an audience sitting in a dark room. That is always what I'm thinking about. And on Lost in a Mountain in Maine, I was thinking about that from both a sonic and visual perspective. And same with Okay. Like, the sound in that movie is designed a specific way to make you feel a specific way when you're in a dark theater watching it. And, like, the next projects I'm working on, Oren and I, one of them I'm designing is an IMAX movie, right?
Yes.
It's not the highest budgeted thing in the world, but we want to design it's one of the beauties of working with GFX ETERNA 55 is that it's an IMAX certified camera. We wanna shoot, independent movie for premium large format because I believe that's one of the ways that you guarantee your movie is gonna be played in theaters is you make a movie for IMAX screens.
Yeah.
So you build your film from the ground up with that in mind. And then you almost have to force the distributor to be like, I guess we have to make that play. Yeah, yeah. So you have to make those calculations in a weird way. Of course, it has to fit the format. Like you can't
Right.
make Canary People for IMAX.
Right. Oh,
Then
that's
why? I don't know.
yeah, I'd love to see it. Andrew, that was such an incredible answer. As much as you can you talk about what you are working on next, and,
But
what's the best way to follow along your story if somebody is just
yeah,
so entranced by okay?
yeah. I'm on Instagram at it's andrew.vhs. Pretty easy to find. And then I'm on IMDb, obviously, but the andrew.vhs is the easiest place. And I've got a website, andrewkightlinger.com, also very easy. But yeah, I have two features that are primed to go. Like my goal is to do two movies back to back in the next 2 years, both very different. One of them, hopefully, IMAX. And I've been writing a lot, and I can't really talk about those, but they're studio features that I'm only just screenwriting on. And yeah, and just now, like I'm going to turn 40 soon. So my goal is to, in my fourth decade, to maximize the output and kind of move to the next level. And what was great about doing okay was it was a project where I was finally able to really work with people that where we all just lifted each other up and made something that I really look back on it and there's nothing I would change. Like truly. There's nothing about it where I go, ugh. Sure, there's always something. Right? But I'm at peace with it and I'm ready to go on to the next thing. And like the Slamdance screening is just like this cherry on top and I'm like ready to go on the next thing and we'll see what happens. But I'm not allowed to talk in too granularly about all the other stuff yet. But
Com completely understand, and I love that spirit, and that's why I have my concluding question be exactly that. So, accepting the assuming that, of course, watch all the Slamdance films that you can, but other than those, is there a film or filmmaker out there that you wish more people knew about?
I saw that question and I was like, oh God, I have so many. I've mentioned Nicholas Roeg and Walkabout a few times on in this conversation. And so I'm just gonna throw that out there. There's a lot of people who know that movie and know that filmmaker, but then there's a lot of people who don't. And I remember seeing that. Have you seen that film?
I've not.
I mean,
I'll fix myself, this
yeah, it's a masterpiece. And like again, I Nolan is a guy who like lives and dies by that movie. It's informed a lot of his work. It's a movie that I discovered when I was just in film school, I would say. And it's broke me wide open as a filmmaker. And I realized how editing and music and sound can just enhance the experience of the audience and how you can be formalistic without alienating the audience. Because it's a kid's film, ultimately.
yeah.
And so Walkabout by Nicholas Roeg. He's made a lot of weird movies, but that's his most, in my opinion, accessible one. And yeah. And also, I wanted to give a shout out just so everybody doesn't think I'm just this pretentious tool. Comedy that more people should watch is Norm Macdonald and Dirty Work. It needs to be reassessed. Maybe it is, but I don't know. I love that movie.
Every few weeks on Twitter, like Norm Macdonald will trend for telling a joke, and I'll get caught like watching the video again of, and I've probably seen it like 20 times before, but it's still just as funny like the 20th time of watching
Funniest
Norm
man.
Macdonald deliver. And it's like, why can't we just revive him? Is there a way to just go back and bring him? Because the commentary for like now would just be so incredible to see.
See, will never be anybody else like him.
Andrew Kightlinger, this has been such a fantastic conversation. The
Right.
film is okay. It's a partnership with Fujifilm and GFX ETERNA 55, and it's just so beautifully shot. I hope this is it ends up being like this huge run on the camera, and people are like, "Wow, with this director, this cinematographer, we need to get them in our feature film," and just it's just this huge thing
I hope
from
so
that
too.
project. 'Cause it's certainly worthy of it, and then but to be able to tackle an emotional subject and, like, utilizing filmmaking rather than telling, I think there's just so many great things about the film, and just so many great ways that you're thinking about filmmaking that are perfect for filmmaking as well as the medium of podcast. Andrew, thanks for I could spend another hour with you talking about filmmaking, so
I
hopefully
agree.
when you come back, you can come back when we have that IMAX film in theaters, and we can chat again.
Perfect. It was a pleasure being on here. Thank you for having me.